Ohio! If you're reading this, then I have completed my dream of cataloging the many tribes of this wasteland we call home. Or you have found this half-complete novel on my corpse after I fell to either the various tribes I seek to learn about, or the harsh elements of this land. Either way, I hope any of my notes can be used to help you gain a greater understanding of the factions of this land, and maybe lead us to greater peace and strengthen our Nakama. My grand keikaku with this novel is to share the history and culture of the various nations that dot over the New California Fault Coast. These accounts will be based on the experience I gather through my travels or the accounts of my allies for areas that I simply cannot enter. These will be as unbiased as I can possibly muster for each territory, and I will put all my biases aside to hopefully join us all together. First, I would like to talk about my own faction of origin and the first family I ever knew, the Shonen Senate. I know the Senate has been contentious for their methods of sharing their ideas over the past few years, but I would like to share our purest beliefs and explain how many sects might have corrupted our original goals and ideals. The Senate originally formed under the simple idea of self-improvement and evolution of the self. The average citizen is encouraged to find out what they want to master in their life, and the community helps to build each other up, and each and every one become the strongest and most resolute person they can be. Many of the male citizens seek to become more physically strong and become martial artists and enter the military. The Senate has expanded and taken over many territories over the years and has become very large in population and high in military power. Many of these territories are focused on specific areas of self-improvement that the general areas wouldn't care so much for, such as particular games the locals enjoy or trades that have gained guilds around their mastery. The expansionist attitude of the Senate has led them to expand to new areas and seek to help the locals improve in the ways that the Senate decides would be best. These takeovers can become violent easily, so many of the factions despise their colonial practices. However, many of the Senate's locations are safe from raiders and wildlife due to the military power that they hold. They have positive trading and collaboration relations with the Shoujo Amazonian tribes and the Seinen camps. The Senate sees these as friendships that they hold in high regard and respect. However, the Isekai Nation and Senate have a bad history, as the Senate has zero respect for the Isekai as they seek to escape this world instead of working to make themselves stronger for it. The government structure of the Senate is self-described as a senatorial craterocracy. This involves each settlement holding a bi-yearly tournament to decide who will become the leader of that settlement. These tournaments can be anything that the settlement deems as important, and is often decided by popular vote, with the specific rules being decided by majority vote as well. The leaders from each settlement form the Senate, that makes the majority of nationwide decisions. This Senate only meets rarely and is often slow to act, since they must come to an 85% consensus before they are allowed to act on a law or rule. Societally, the Senate is very similar to its own government. The basic ideals is that all citizens should be treated fairly and given equal opportunity to work for themselves to become stronger. However, each settlement has had their own issues in the past, with people who believe that no one works as hard as themselves and becomes bullies to the other citizens. This eventually led to the referees unit being formed to police the settlements and stop any form of demoralization on others. Speaking of the refs, I should mention the structure of the Senate's military force. When enrolling, each applicant is meant to spar with each other to measure their current power level and place each in an appropriate unit. After every 3 years, each body in the military spar again to reassess the power level of each. The ranks of the military, from the highest level of influence to the least level, is first the Senate, generals, shock troopers, troopers, and last the referee units. This military is known as one of the most formidable in the wasteland, due to the combat training of each and every member as well as its size. Now for each section, I would like to include an image of the average citizen from each faction, and here I would like to introduce you to my neighbors, as I said goodbye to them before I set off on my journey. On the left is depicted the chef from my small settlement, and on the right is my school teacher growing up. Mr. Vins is a 50-year-old man at the time of my writing, and has been a strong and silent man for as long as I've known him. Through all his intimidating nature, he is also a very kind man who seeks to help feed the town and even those who can't always offer the appropriate payment. Next to him is his wife, Miss Vins, 48 years old and the local early education instructor. She's always kept a kind exterior appearance that hides her strong will to make sure that the children of the town are equipped with the appropriate knowledge to survive and strive in the harsh world. Overall, our mighty nation has become strong due to the dream to evolve past the person we were yesterday and grow into the strongest beings we can for us and for the future. Next, I would like to discuss the highly aggressive and powerful tribes of the Wastes that have decided to return to a more simplistic, isolated way of life. The Shoujo Amazonian tribes. These tribes, made of only women, have harsh laws that forbid any male from entering their marked territories, so for this section I'll be basing this off my own knowledge of the Amazonians, as well as a close friend of mine who was able to enter the area on my behalf. First is the major ideas that the tribe wishes to establish by forbidding men. They seek to allow women to find strength in themselves and live independently of anyone else, especially without a man. This comes from the belief that the presence of men itself will inevitably lead to a life of servitude and a lack of personal freedoms. The tribes have an almost simple society and economy due to the lack of any monetary system, and the only form of payment to speak of is based around trading goods and services. The tribe also practices human hunting as a sport and a major act of growth for young women who hunt down men they wish to have as their partner. If this hunt fails, then the woman in question is seen as not being ready for a partner or to have children yet, so they are not allowed to take on any partners or children until they can try again at the hunt in 5 years' time. Each member is allowed 8 attempts before they are unable to take the hunt anymore, and the average age the hunt is first taken is between 15 and 18 years old. The population of these few tribes is quite small compared to the more militaristic nations, but still sizable when compared to most other factions of the Waste. Each tribe has an estimated population of 150, and there are 4 total areas that the Amazonians have control over, and each are within close proximity to each other in the Amazonian woods. These woods help to assure the preferred way of life for the tribes, since they are dense and very difficult to navigate if one is not familiar with the area, as well as having plenty of places for the hunters to hide and wait for any prey that may enter the area. In terms of relations, the tribes have a tense respect for most of the coast due to their aggressive nature. In fact, the only factions that have won the respect of the tribes are the Shonen Senate and the Seinen camps. The respect for the Senate is only due to their immense power and drive, but the tribes truly do admire and respect the Seinen camps due to their goals being similar. The Romance factions in Ecchi territory have taken most of the brunt of the Amazonians due to them seeing these factions as directly opposing their ideals aggressively. Overall, no one wants to suffer the wrath of the Amazonians due to their masterful use of guerrilla tactics and basic tools that can be repaired on the fly. The tribal military is similar to the Senates as they split their troops into different units that focus on different aspects of combat. First is the basic guerrilla troops that often attack quickly from the bushes and shadows. Then the sniper units that use blow darts, bows, and occasionally guns for the elite members if they so choose. Heavy armor units attack similarly to the guerrilla troops but use the self-explanatory heavy armor that turns fights into a battle of attrition. And last is the assassins, which exclusively act around deception and work behind the enemy lines to take out military or political leaders. This immensely powerful military is seen as a massive threat to many, but luckily for many, this structure is primarily used for defense and attacking the few factions that have incurred the tribe's wrath. To lead this military, the tribes employ an electoral constitutional government. This system works by having the oldest and wisest women in the tribe at the time become candidates for the position of queen. These candidates are then voted for via adults from the tribe through democratic vote, and then majority rules takes the position of queen. The queen has the ability to recall the military but not to send them to action, and can resolve local issues for their respective tribes. All of the queens make up the leadership of the Amazonians, and all higher level decisions that require all the tribes go first to them. The discriminatory nature of the tribe's attitude towards men has caused their society to become structured oddly, and many rumors have spread out about them and their treatment of men. Firstly, the society is very militaristic and has a focus on becoming stronger as a person and as a society. This leads any woman that is not deemed as working hard enough for the tribe to be banished. One would imagine this would lead to a sense of fear in the community, but based on my informant's testimony, many of the residents see this as a rarely used punishment for criminals and freeloaders. A couple of rumors surrounding the tribe say that if a strong male walks into the tribes, the Amazonians will tranquilize the man and keep him as a reproduction slave. Another state that all men born in the tribe are cast in the wilderness as infants. However, the validity of these are unknown even to my informant, since these seem to make for good psychological warfare. Now, my informant has written a few notes about one of the Amazonians she has met in her time. She writes of a 38-year-old school teacher only named as Miss Lunas. Lunas is said to teach physical education and specializes in hand-to-hand combat with teenagers of the ages between 13 and 15. It says that she views femininity as the ability to remain strong even in the face of opposition, and she always teaches her students that if a fight is only lost when you admit defeat, not with words or body language, but when you stop punching and kicking for your own survival. It is also noticed that Lunas talks with an intensity and ferocity that is only matched by a sparring match my informant witnessed from her. These tribes definitely have achieved their independence of men to the farthest degree possible, and for that I must commend them. However, there have been many bodies that lay this path, and it is up to each and every person aware of their history to determine if they should be praised or condemned for their efforts. In many different spots of the wasteland, you may find yourself upon a small camp of hardened warriors and soldiers. These experienced fighters are on their own individual quest of redemption and recovery, using these individual camps as small stopping points to rest their weary souls. The men and women who seek this redemption are known as the Seinen, people who take up a personal quest that takes many years to fully complete. The Seinen are made of people that have been pushed around by the wasteland and want to find a way to fight back against those who have wronged them. Ultimately, each person has their own goals they seek to reach, but will often team up and help each other when immediate goals are in line with each other. The camps are for the most part very open to newcomers, since they seek to always allow people to follow the ideals of the journey of the self. This openness does lead to the members being more sympathetic to new Seinen recruits. It's very common for the more experienced Seinen to help each new member by giving them basic supplies such as food, water, weapons to defend themselves, and simple armor. The camps have taken up a role similar to an older sibling and mediator to the Shonen and Shoujo factions, since the Seinen see them as kindred spirits that seek the same basic goal as themselves. Much like their younger kid brother, the Seinen have a mild disagreement with the Isekai Nation due to their unwillingness to develop from their situation, but take no aggressive action against them like the Shonen. They also have a moral difference with the SOL outpost due to their stagnation and inability to change. The camps overall have a disagreement with these factions but try to stay civil in talks. The Seinen are a large but fragmented group of people who have spread themselves far instead of having a main center. This structure is designed to incentivize long-distance travel and have more safe areas for travelers while on their journey. Each camp is made up of temporary shelters, reinforced, and simple structures that can be easily repaired or replaced when broken. This far-spread structure has also led to a lack of general rules that every member subscribes to. The only rules I've been able to observe in the vast majority in the Seinen is a respect for one's elders, and I quote, "If a man has been able to grow old in this desolate wasteland, then he deserves more respect than any younger man who has yet to prove his resolve." The camps are all held together by a theocratic government that employs the oldest and wisest Seinen at the time into the seers. These act as the council of 5 to 8 people and help new recruits at the start of their journeys. The seers also can decide to revoke the support for any current members if they commit any grossly offensive or heinous crimes against either the other members of the Senate or innocent civilians. The worst of these crimes can lead to the direct opposition of the Seinen, which will cause most of the members to hunt down the offender and kill them on sight. There is no overarching military structure of the camps, but each of the Seinen are very skilled fighters and are, for the most part, always given the basic arms they need to defend themselves from attacks when joining. Due to this, raiders aren't much of an issue for the camps. Even though the military is only made up of the unorganized members, they are still highly regarded as one of the strongest fighting forces in the California coast. This strength comes from how battle-hardened the majority of the Seinen are after fighting for years on end for their respective journeys. Now for the Seinen I met on my travels is a man whose name I've never learned. He is a very tall and quiet man who wore heavy armor and a hazmat helm. He was missing his left arm, and in its place is a 2.5-foot blade that he wields with extreme precision, as well as the pistol and automatic rifle he carries. The only information I was able to retrieve was that he has been traveling for over 7 years and is searching for his wife, who was taken away by a raider attack, which also took his arm from him. In fact, the only words I ever heard him say was, "my wife." And the rest of the information I was able to interpret from his body movements to my questions with help from the members of the camp I was in. At the end of my time with the Seinen, I came away with a great respect for their way of life and dedication to each member finding their goals. However, I am concerned that the future they have may end up supporting people who will end up dragging the entire group into disfavor with all the other factions of the Wasteland. Unlike the previous few forms of governing I mentioned, this one is fully dedicated to one major city as the only known outpost. Here we have a nation of scientists and researchers who are all gathered together to work towards the common goal of finding the other world and escaping from this ruinous wasteland. The Isekai Nation makes research their number one priority, and because of that, they are one of the most highly developed factions in the coast in terms of technology. Some of the advancements originating from the Isekai include hard light generation, short-range teleportation, successfully connecting a human brain to robotic appendages, and discovering many new forms of energy absorption from the environmental elements. These elements have led to the nation becoming feared by others or seen as a desired ally for many smaller factions. Fortunately for many, these advancements are primarily used for the goal of searching for the vague other world. The nation itself is only considered average size by many due to the entire population staying within the confines of the city, as well as the limited number of people that this city can hold. This limited population cap has created a system that secures the safety of anyone working or studying at any of the big organizations, while anyone else is left to fend for themselves by working normal jobs. These can be anything such as shop owners, disposal workers, cooks, elementary school teachers, non-essential repairmen, and metal workers. Speaking of the organizations, I should explain their governmental roles before I get into their societal roles. The organizations follow a sort of council theocracy, where they each have their own respective executive presidents come together as the council, for lack of a better word. This council meets every year and shares any of their scientific findings that could help find the path to the other world. The council also each takes up a portion of the city as a district, and any issues with zoning or other politics can be discussed during the annual meetings, and any changes can be proposed and voted on by the presidents. The presidents have full reign over the district to do with as they see fit, but the citizens are always allowed to move to other districts of the city, so in theory, this is what keeps the balance of authority in swing. Unfortunately, this seems to have led to every president acting as they wish, knowing that the others act similarly, so the citizens' situation would not change much if they did decide to move. Following this crude system of governing is the social structure that has popped up around it because of it. The presence of the organizations has led to a medieval caste system where the organization members sit at the highest echelon of society and live with little strife or hardship. Under them are the skilled essential workers, who work directly for the organizations, and the average essential worker, which works for the general public. Lastly is the peasantry class, which is used as unskilled workers for the organizations. These people live in very poor conditions and are not protected by the upper class unless the situation would cause them to work less effectively. The unskilled workers often form into militia groups that seek to bring down the system as it stands now due to their poor treatment by the upper class. This system is effective in terms of importance to the overall mission of the nation, but I do not believe anyone can see this and not at least notice the less than stellar condition the lower class of the people are forced to live in. Outsourcing has become very common since the nation is steadfast in its sole goal of the other world, so many industries such as farming, mining, and even the military and police are filled by other factions. Specifically, the military doubles as the police and is filled by private raiders forces who work for food and permanent shelter. These ruffians have been known to abuse their authority and take advantage of the lower class due to the lack of proper judicial systems to protect them from this abuse. The military members are only barred when their actions have direct effect on the organization's plans. The limited nature of the nation's military means that the power output is only enough to defend the city from inside and prevent most attacks from the outside. The Isekai Nation is very nervous when it comes to outsiders, and is often slow to trust others unless they have something to gain. This and the horrible experiments make this one of the most despised factions on the coastline. In fact, the only other major faction that has a positive relationship with Isekai is the Horror Cult, due to their mutually beneficial business arrangement where the nation trades tech and tools in exchange for the cult's minerals from their mining efforts. Many attacks have been launched against the nation by the Shonen and the Megatropolis before, but now the nation seeks a positive relationship with the Megatropolis for their advanced tech. In my time, I have met the different types of people that live in the city of the Isekai, and I have randomly selected this one. Here we have an organization scientist by the name of Arthur Lancer, who works on the portal technology specifically. He's a 35-year-old man who lives on his own in a small studio apartment in the Kono district. And despite living within the city for his entire life, he has a strong hatred for the wasteland and the brutality it creates. When talking, he has a very meek manner of speech that is contrasted with a more confident tone when discussing his plans for the portal tech. Overall, Arthur seems like a very strange man that seems to be somewhat disconnected from the rest of the world. The Isekai Nation has definitely been one of my least favorite places to visit in my journey. This is mostly due to the abhorrent nature of the treatment towards the lower classes and the absolutely authoritarian control the poorly planned government has over the said lower classes. I try to remain unbiased in these passages, but seeing places like this makes it quite difficult for me. Next, I'd like to start getting into more traditional factions that make up most of the smaller factions of the New Coast. First is a fractured group that seeks to reclaim one of the greatest joys known to humanity, romance. These romance factions are split into three major groups: basic ideology, Fujoshi ideology, and harem ideology. Basic ideology is the classical idea of searching for one's sole life partner, someone they love more than they love their own life. Fujoshi ideology focuses on pairing people one finds beautiful together in love. Lastly, the harem ideology is the practice of finding as many people one finds beautiful and adding them to their harem. Each sect of this group holds to the core ideals that the greatest goal of humanity is to find their love, however it may come to each and every member. These individual factions are all separated while still remaining in small camps relatively close to each other. Even still, the camps are small and only hold around 30 citizens in each. The members in these camps do their best to fill everyday needed roles that many civilizations would need to sustain life. This is mostly used to reclaim some sense of normality from the previous world. The simple towns that these people call home require no government and are instead governed by the citizens themselves due to the lack of major internal conflict. The only time that a police force is needed is for crimes committed by citizens, which falls under the jurisdiction of the court of opinion. Attacks from the outside aren't much of a problem since the factions have settled in towns that have sunk into the previous world's fault lines. The more relaxed and personally focused factions have formed a bit of a tight relationship with each other and try to help the others out with materials and power when needed. This relationship includes the romance factions, SOL Outpost, and Ecchi Territory. They all share information freely and trade materials to keep up the good chain of commerce. On the opposite hand, the romance factions fear both the Shoujo tribes and the horror cult due to their intensity and a few attacks from the Shoujo in the past. Despite all that, the romantics are surprisingly open to newcomers who want to truly follow the goals of their respective factions. However, they still do fight with each other quite often due to their differences. Historically, the romance factions have had a problem with sexism in the past due to the majority of male members over female members. 75% of the members are men. Ideally, the members are meant to view each other as equals, and many do follow this idea, but the few have made parts of their respective factions unwelcoming to women because of their creepy behavior. The Fujoshi faction is actually the most recent branch and was created by women who wanted to be free from those who have antagonized them. Coincidentally, my example citizen is a member of the Fujoshi tribe and a close friend of mine, Sakura Fuji. Her family was one of the first to form the Fujoshi faction, and as a result, they took the Fuji name for their family. Sakura is 22 years old and has told me many times that she wants to pair cute boys together. I don't really understand the appeal of playing Cupid, but she's cute, so I just kind of nod along with her. Forgive me, I might have gotten too personal there for a second. These simple nations don't have as much in-depth history and cultural evolution, so these next few entries are going to be a bit brief. These outposts that dot all over the coastline exclusively make up pre-disaster buildings that have managed to survive to the New World. The buildings the SOL people most commonly call home are schools and office buildings because of the mission statement of these people. The SOL serves a simple purpose: to reclaim how life is meant to function like it was before the Great Disaster. They search for the peaceful bliss their ancestors knew in their life from the simple day-to-day life with all its simple and easy ups and downs. Nervous and isolated best describes the SOL people and their approach to diplomacy. They prefer to stick to themselves and their role-playing instead of worrying about the political sphere in California and the war they could entail. This comes from the people's own ideals as well as a fear of the violent nations that would seek to convert them and take their land. Speaking of relations, as stated before, the SOL is supported and supports the romance factions and ecchi territory due to their similar goals of simple human pleasures. The outposts specifically fear the attacks from the shonen, shoujo, and isekai. The shonen attacks for new bases, the shoujo attacks to rescue women from their captivity, and the isekai for human test subjects since the SOL is one of the weakest peoples. Many of the settlements are quite small, due to the static condition they have to maintain each basin, and as such have developed a society that idolizes those with the ability to go out and explore for new areas to populate. Each person is given two choices for their paths in life when they come to the age of 16. First is the stationary path, where a person finds a clique to use as their own personal social group. They tend to stick with these groups for life or only switch once or twice. Second is the path of exploration, which is where a person will explore for a new base to make home. Founders of each base take the role of president and are the head of their area. The presidents only help with disputes, and all other factors are left up to the individuals. Each individual is meant to fill a role in their community, with larger settlements having full clubs of members who specialize in certain skills. For the most part, these communities form a communist economy, where all members share necessities such as food and water, since everyone is meant to pitch in and help the settlement. However, many of the larger settlements have collapsed under this system and had to rebuild from the ground up. The only form of protection that the outposts have are the few sports clubs that pop up occasionally, since they are the most physically fit of all the members. These clubs only protect their own outposts, so most of the small bases are free game for raiders. The sports clubs are mostly armed with melee sports weapons and equipment due to their focus on specific sports. In my travels, I have taken refuge in an SOL outpost every once in a while, so I'm quite well versed in the many different types of people that may make up this faction. Here we have the president of an outpost I visited when I traveled past dangerous areas, Lisa Kujikawa. Miss Lisa is 28 years old, and as the president, she tries to focus on everyone in the outpost getting along and helping each other to make the best they can. She has a clearly faked, stern manner of talking that is easily discerned due to her constant breaks in character. I believe in the old world lexicon they would call this behavior cringe, and she would be probably mocked for it. Also, given the rest of her behavior, I believe her glasses are also fake, since I've seen her looking at things near and far without them on different occasions. This concludes one of the more bizarre yet surprisingly helpful factions of all the coastline. And for the last of the traditionalist factions, we have the ecchi territory. This is another singular area that houses all the members similar to the Isekai Nation. The territory is best described as a nudist colony because the members have decided that human life is meant to live as free as possible, and part of that involves refusing to cover oneself with any form of garment. They also see nature as the ultimate form of beauty, so covering the human form would be an action of shame towards nature itself. The ecchi people have adopted a very primitive form of life. They have abandoned any technological or medicinal advancements to better fit in with nature. Societal concepts such as modesty and the idea of marriage have been left in the past. As well, the people take a survival of the fittest approach to most things in society. The women of the society are known to have children with up to 3 to 4 men in their lifetime. However, most children here don't make it very far in the world, with the territory having a 62% survival rate for childbirth for the children and a 68% survival rate for the mothers. Part of the territory's anti-modesty stance has led to public intercourse becoming very common. Mass gatherings can at largest take up an entire plot of land, and many of the women here exchange favors for necessary goods and services. I believe this mostly comes from the nudist aspect, but I'm not claiming to be an expert in any sense of the subject. The people of the ecchi territory are very friendly and always willing to allow newcomers to see if they would like to live in tune with nature. This might come from the very small size of the population in combination with their vast land they inhabit. The territory itself resides in a large canyon that is too deep to climb down to, with the only other way being to walk through the entire canyon. This environment is how the territory has been able to stay alive despite having no police or military to defend their faction. Due to their simple roots, the territory has formed a self-defined anarcho-monarchy system where all the members fulfill their chosen roles as they see fit and trade their goods or services for other goods or services at their own discretion and desire. There is no leading figure, so each citizen considers themselves their own supreme leader of their life and defends themselves and each other based on that idea. As stated before, the ecchi, SOL, and romance ideas all have common ground that they can agree with, and the ecchi have a trade agreement with the Isekai Nation, where the nation gives them clean water to use, and the Isekai scientists are allowed to visit the territory for private research. The ecchi have a strong fear of the Shoujo tribes due to their many attacks on the territory, which have started to wear on the people over time. For the citizens of this region, I decided to use the lady hosting me, who also acted as my guide during my brief time in the territory. Her name is Rika. Family names do not exist in the territory. She's 27 and a mother of 3, a young boy and twin girls. Rika explained to me that she fills the woman's traditional role as a bearer of children, and trades favors for goods, and her son also supports her and his 2 sisters by working with construction. She also normally acts as a guide for new people very often, so she was very understanding of my sense of discomfort. If I could say anything against her, it would be that she was a bit needlessly sexual with her tone of speech and choice of wording, but I think it might have just been her trying to entice me for her work, or might just be some kind of adapted nature. Now to move from the traditional factions to one that prefers to remain away from the light, literally and figuratively. This cult is dedicated to the reading and soulful absorption of horror manga and anime. They do this in an attempt to build themselves up in resolve so they can handle any hardship the outside world has to give them. These people live mostly in cave systems that provide some protection from the wilderness, and they survive by mining for precious minerals and metals and trading them to the other factions for goods like food, weapons, and materials they can't get often. The cult primarily trades with the Isekai Nation for clothing and water, the Mechatropolis for weapons, and the Shonen for food. These relationships are exclusively professional, and the cult gains no guidance from any of those who help them. Each of the groups mainly focus on reading and watching horror stories from specific authors such as Junji Ito and Satoshi Kon. The groups also find stories they find to be the scariest and use that as their basis for their emotional growth into more fearless people. The cult is mostly isolationist except for the necessary trade agreements. They aren't aggressive to outsiders, but they will not allow them to enter their caves freely. The cult is also of average population size since they only live in a few cavern systems around the former fault line. For their government, they have formed a conservative monarchy with the head being chosen by age. This is because the cult has developed an ideology that shows a great respect for anyone who has been able to grow old in the hazardous wastelands, similar to the seinen camps. The cult head is in charge of leading group readings, reading material, and handles internal affairs. Due to the cult mostly exporting mined goods, they have developed a male-focused society where women are more often stay-at-home mothers or work in less demanding roles with only a few exceptions. The size and focus on men in physical jobs has led to the men doubling as the protective force of their groups. This militia acts as police when needed and the army for external threats. When I was visiting a group that focused on the works of Junji Ito, I met a man of similar age to myself, so I asked him to fill me in on himself. His name is Ash Brass. He is 32 and works in the mines with his father and 2 older brothers. He told me he wants to become a braver man so he can one day leave the caves and explore the bright upside world. Apparently, he has heard many of the war stories of the shonen and mechanics who visit this area and want to see their world for himself. He talks very crass and rough, but not in a disregarding or humiliating way. It's more like a driven person similar to my shonen brethren. Now I believe we can move on to our last faction that I currently know of, the mechanics of the Mechatropolis. The Mechatropolis is a massive city of mechanics and architects who all seek to build the largest and most powerful mechs possible. This pride comes from their burning passion for their craft and wanting to prove their own skill, might, genius, or any other form of pride or power. The city itself is built on the ruins of Sacramento, and the entire society lives within this expanding fortress. The city uses abandoned mechs as housing and buildings of business since the city was originally used as a scrap yard for unwanted mechs before one of the college founders revolutionized the faction by renovating these old tanks into living conditions. The population is manageable, but could suffer if a rise in population were to occur quickly. In terms of trading relations, the Mechatropolis holds a very important role as a weapons manufacturer for many people. Most guns or electronic weapons one may find in the California waste come from either the Isekai Nation or more likely the Mechatropolis. The most important relationship for the city is with the horror cult, since they mine for the metals that the city needs to continue its way of life. Currently, the Isekai Nation is being led on for a potential relationship, so the mechanics can get their hands on the Isekai's experimental biotech. Originally, the city was populated by many different colleges. They each had their own ideas of how mechs should be built and what they should be built for, but over time they came together and formed a confederacy. This system is similar to the Isekai Nation since both use the presence of their smaller factions as the highest council, but here none of the council has any direct control over any land and simply acts as the chief of the armed forces and highest judicial figure. Any changes to the laws of the land are directly created and voted on by the citizens in a democratic system based on their relative location to the area of effect of the proposed change. The presidents of each college is voted on by the students of their college, and elections are held once every 5 years. The military force is 100% voluntary, and is able to function this way due to most mechanics wishing to see their mechs in actual combat. There is no form of rank or leadership other than the announcers who simply relay the messages from the presidents. Each college has formed their own branch of the military, and their president is the one they answer to first. This is one of the most feared powers in the Wasteland, due to their just raw firepower. The number of mechs is small since many of them require multiple people to pilot effectively, but each one is still strong enough to take out at least 5 men with guns before suffering lasting damage. The aforementioned colleges work more like a business than a school. Applicants begin to apply around the age of 17 and are expected to start by the year after starting their application process. Many of the mechanics start out with simple or inconsequential jobs, such as interns or delivery drivers, but can move up through the ranks of importance based on their displayed skill or monetary influence. These colleges have created a culture of coliseum fighting as the primary way of life, so that the regular fighting arenas are often the best place for young mechanics to display their skill. The Electoral Celebration Tournament is the highest honor for any of the mechanics to fight in. This mecha tournament takes place once every 5 years during the election period. For the new presidents in each college is allowed up to 2 of their mechs to fight in each tournament, for a grand prize and the honor of having the strongest mech in the city. The city maintains a similar society to those used by our ancestors, given that the Mechatropolis is the only faction that has started printing their own currency. They have a capitalistic structure where those with more money have an easier time with procuring goods and services and are very hesitant to share their wealth. The money printed is relatively equated to complex technology. For example, many places can exchange small denominations for items such as gears and wires, while larger amounts of money can be traded in for engines, complex joints, or powerful computer bases. The colleges with more wealth are often preferred by the upper classes for their purposes, while the less well-off colleges are left to work for much less money, meaning their products are often much harder to create. Of the 12 established colleges, only 3 of them aren't considered to be higher class, and less mechanics apply to them as a result. However, the mechanics from the lower levels of society are often passed up by higher level colleges, so they go to work for the lower class mechanics, leading them to having a stronger bond together than many of the higher class colleges. From one of these lower class colleges, we have Tim Diger, who works as a riveter and head welder for his college. He is 43 years old and has been married once in the past, but his wife passed about 8 years ago, and he told me he has no plans to remarry. He has a very rough voice from his constant smoking. He prefers Old World cigarettes the best, but he does like the ones made by the nearby SOL outpost. He was pretty confused about my plan to record all the factions, but he decided to help me anyways. I think Tim could be best described as a very content and simple man. He said that he's okay with this work and only wished that he was paid just $3 more an hour so he could afford beer more often. And that concludes my listing of all the factions of the New California coast. The entire journey took me 3 years to complete, and in that time I was able to meet so many unique and colorful people. More than anything, I feel like I have learned how different yet similar we all are. Many of the factions I've cataloged outright hate each other and would attack to kill on sight. But I can see that all of this is just trying to rebuild a just and right world in the eyes of their own people. The only issue is the many differences that people have with morals and practices, but I believe this has always been an issue in human history. Even still, as I write these very words, I am awestruck by the beauty and compassion that humanity is capable of, even in our most dire hour, and I hope that this book will show everyone that we are all simply trying to live within our means and judgment in this harsh world that we have come to call home once more. As for me, I'm not sure. Maybe I will use the rest of my time here trying to find peace in this barren land, or perhaps I can journey into the rest of the greater America area and find what groups of people may have managed to sprout out of this harsh land. Either way, I vow to continue writing and documenting, because I've learned from the stories that many of these factions love, if a story is not left to be read in the future, then it might as well not be written at all. Hey, I just kind of wanted to take a minute after the video and not have to speak in like the stupid kind of cringe character voice like I have been for the past, I think, 35, 40 so odd minutes. Just wanted to say thanks for, getting to the end of the video, I guess, first of all. And I also want to say thanks for like the support on the, I don't know if many of you have seen it, but the last video I put out, to the JoJo TTRPG project I was working on for a little bit, put it out. I was really happy with the reception. A lot of people were like super supportive, and a lot of cool ideas come from that. I'm gonna have to make a follow-up sometime. I hope by like a year, maybe. I'll have a second part or like an update to that, I guess, version 2 or whatever. A lot of the suggestions were really helpful. A lot of comments were really cool or funny or whatever. It really sucks that YouTube decided to just age restrict it for, I guess, swearing reasons. I don't know. I tried talking to them on Twitter, and no one gave me any specifics, which I'm not really surprised about. But I'll probably try to re-edit it without any, cutting out that foul, unchristian-like language, and just throwing that back up somewhere on here. I don't know. If only time will tell, I guess. But yeah. I mean, I hope you enjoyed. I mean, if you got to the end, so I guess you did. So. Just a little, world building kind of project I was working on for a little bit. I hope you liked it. I had fun doing it for a bit. I have more similar to this coming out. I don't know when. Not the same world, but just general world building projects that I think are kind of fun to work on. So that'll come out when it comes out, I guess. I got like a rap sheet, I guess, and some like video game design stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'll have some like art projects coming out. I've got like all kinds of stuff going on. I'm just a little ball of energy, I guess, and creativity or whatever you'd like to call it. But so I appreciate all the support on the last video, and thanks for watching this one. And I probably need to do it more because I guess it's the YouTube thing to do, and it does help out a lot, I guess. But I do have like a Twitter and an Instagram in the description. I think on my channel about it or whatever it is. If you want to check that out, you can. It's a lot of more like just art stuff that I put out. I'm pretty proud of it, but getting traction is always the hard part with this internet stuff. So I guess that's it for me. Hope you enjoyed. You know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, bell, whatever the hell else they're adding on. Share, I guess. Oh, fuck, I just cursed twice. Oh, I gotta watch that. Well, I guess it's for me before I end up saying something else I'm gonna have to end up bleeping out. So yeah, just have a good rest of your day, night, morning, afternoon, whatever. I hope it's pleasant and enjoyable. And see you when I see you.